Hello, class. This class has barely started, but already I've extolled the virtues of the Rational Comprehensive Plan and the Preservation Plan and explained why they're important. At least I hope I have in my metaphor of the toolbox. And today I'm going to mix my metaphors even more, sorry about that. But I mean, the reality is I could either mix my metaphors, which is a little bit annoying, or I could just have it be super dry in slides that have just a bunch of text, and nobody wants that, right? You don't want that. Instead, I'm going to mix my metaphors, and instead of a toolbox today, I'm going to talk about a shield, because that's really what rational comprehensive planning is for. In a lot of ways, yes, obviously it's for planning, right? The whole point is to kind of plan what you're doing. But why plan what you're doing? Well, because preservation planning is not actually a law, what's the point in doing it? What's the point in doing planning other than you have to do it, right? Because even if you have to do it, okay, well, you do it and then you never touch it again and then that's it. But the reason that you really, really need to emphasize planning, whether it be a separate preservation plan or a integrated preservation plan, is that it's really important in terms of explaining why you have all of those rules out there, right? All of those laws, because fundamentally a law is only as good as the reason that it exists. Right? If it doesn't have a good reason for existing, for instance, if it's not in the public good, which we've talked about before, then probably it's, against the law. And if it's against the law, once you go to court with it, you're, not going to be successful because it's against the Constitution to do stuff if it's random. So how do you do stuff without it being random? Well, you have it based on a plan. And what is the plan based on? Well, it's based on, first and foremost, data. I know I've talked about this before. I'm going to talk about this again. Data is the most important thing for a good plan. A good plan is always based on excellent data, as good as possible. Now, of course, good data is not completely possible. We've talked about this before in other classes, right? You're going to have to use data that are out of date and imperfect, and that's true. But in planning in particular, and in preservation planning in particular, the reality is you can get some pretty good data. In other words, you can find out stuff about historic sites that maybe is not super easy to get in terms of, let's say, crime data or even housing data sometimes, right? It's not that hard to collect the data that you need for historic preservation, because those data fundamentally are just what are the historic resources in an area? What can we say about them? In other words, the Cultural Resource Survey. So the Cultural Resource Survey is what is going to allow for really, really good data about the historic resources in any particular area. And once you have that excellent data about the historic resources, then, and really only then, can you protect those resources properly and also understand how those resources interact with the rest of the important bits, the important motivators in your town, right? So it's not just preservation, right? It's also things like economic development. It's also things like safety and security. It's also things like transport and transit, right? So there's all sorts of other things that you need to do, but preservation can and should be part of that stuff. So getting the correct data, the complete data, is really, really important. Doing that through a cultural resource survey, of course, is not just a one-time thing, and we're going to talk about that at length. You need to collect those data pretty regularly to make sure that they're up to date. Now, still, this data for me is a very positive, wonderful thing, and so it's not just any unicorn. In my case, students a few years ago named this unicorn and he is called Stan. Stan, the magical historic preservation data unicorn. And yes, he has a beard and a mustache because I like facial hair, so sue me. But he's a good unicorn. Okay. The other thing that a plan needs in order to be successful and in order for the preservation to be successful is simply to have it be slow and steady, right? What you don't want to do is rush people into preservation. For one, preservation is really never going to be like the top priority for anybody. And also, if you try to rush people too fast, what you're going to make them think is, hey, the government's trying to tell me what to do, and I don't want the government to tell me what to do. Or, hey, the government's telling me this is a historic site, but really it's just old. Man, the number of times I've heard that is just insane. So if you want people to do this and not fight you, part of it is, of course, having the good data, but part of it is giving people the time to adjust. You can't just make people prioritize preservation without giving them the time to work on that, the time to just adjust. So what you really want is to give them the time to understand, hey, these are historic sites. Hey, they're important. How are we going to protect them? Well, we're going to survey them, and that's going to take a while. And then once we've surveyed them, we're going to come up with rules that make sense to protect them. Ideally, preservation planning should be boring. It should be extremely slow. So a good preservation planning setup, right, from, hey, there are sites and we might want to protect them, to here's a preservation plan, should really take, 10, 15 years. It should not be rushed at all, okay? You should really give people lots and lots and lots of time to get used to it. If you do that, then people are much more likely to be in favor of preservation and to not feel that preservation is a problem, but instead to feel that preservation is something that is helping them with things like property values, for instance. So I've used a turtle. I could have used a sloth, except drawing a sloth is more challenging, so instead it's a turtle. The other thing that's very important in a plan is that it be implemented in a way that is really rational in terms of its layout. So this goes back to the surveying, right? You really want to make sure that your surveying is well organized, and that also means that you survey different parts of the city as carefully as you can, and again, taking your time, right? So this is going to make sure that over time you survey an area and you don't forget important historic resources. You don't forget items that really need to be protected, and that is truly, truly important. And I'll explain how to do that later on. When you have all of these pieces put together, then and only then do you have a way to do preservation and planning that's good, right? That will allow for people to hopefully preserve the site, preserve the historic resources without fighting too much. I mean, there's always going to be some people who aren't super excited about it. And to make sure that your process is a process that obeys the Constitution and is something that people can get on board with. I mean, that's the other thing, right, is that you really want to make sure that you're not alienating people, that you're not making people feel that they're being dispossessed of their properties, that that their rights are being infringed upon. And instead, you want them to feel that, hey, this heritage is important and we want to help protect it. And and just generally make people feel good about all this, right? And to do that, you really need to make sure that the process is really transparent and good. Once you've done that, then and only then do you create a space that really allows for good planning. Oh, and man, my banner's off-centered. That's really upsetting. Okay, I have to fix that. That's going to upset me. There we go. That's better. Good. So then at that point, you can make something that works well for preservation. So let's finish our banner here. It's very hard to talk while trying to do this, I have to say. For preservation. This is just, my handwriting is just, this is why I'm not an architect, you guys. Better. Yeah, that's good enough. All right. So I tried doing this while talking. I realize it's really not perfect. If you think it would be better for me to have slides with, more, formal whatever stuff, I can do that instead. I just thought this would be a little bit more fun. But yeah, if you'd rather have slides, let me know and I can do that. I can do that instead. All right. I hope that was clear. Basically, you need a plan. A plan is super crucial. You need the plan to have good data. You need the plan to be implemented over a long period of time so that there are no surprises. You need it to cover the entire geography. Then and only then can you allow for those laws that come out of that plan to be implementable, because otherwise people will take you to court and they will win. All right, that's it for right now. Thanks for listening.